My name is Helen Morris. I am 47 years old, and I run a small bakery. I live alone now. I felt the silence every morning. I thought love was enough. People think I lost my son in one moment, but the truth is different. I knew it happened slowly. I whispered to myself, again and again. I trusted too much. I waited too long. I did not know my love would become my regret, and my home would feel empty, and my son would leave me alone. We used to wake up before sunrise. I remember those mornings very clearly. The sky was still dark, and the streets were quiet. I opened the bakery door with my old key. The metal felt cold in my hand. I smelled fresh bread before it was even baked. Ethan was small then. He followed me everywhere. I felt proud when he stood next to me. I thought we were a team. I whispered to myself, "This is my life." I knew I was tired, but I was happy. Every morning, I mixed flour and water. My hands were white with powder. My fingers felt dry and rough. The oven was warm. The room slowly filled with the smell of bread. Customers came early. They smiled at Ethan and called him a good boy. I used to give him sweet bread for breakfast. I watched him eat with messy hands. I felt love in those small moments. I thought love meant doing everything for him. I thought protecting him was love. When his father left, everything changed. Ethan cried at night. I held him close. I whispered to myself, "Asterisk, I will never let him suffer." I promised something inside my heart. I promised I would take care of him forever. I worked longer hours. I opened the bakery early. I closed it very late. My feet hurt. My back hurt. But I said nothing. I felt strong when I saw Ethan smile. I knew I was doing this for him. As he grew older, I did more. I paid for everything. I solved his problems. If he forgot his homework, I spoke to his teacher. If he broke something, I paid for it. I thought I was helping him. I thought I was being a good mother. But slowly, something changed. Ethan stopped waking up early. He slept while I worked. I felt the silence in the bakery without him. I told myself, he is young asterisk. I waited. I always waited. He began to come late. Sometimes he did not come home at all. I felt worried, but I said nothing. I thought protecting him was love, but then everything changed. One day, a customer complained. Another day, a bill arrived late. I felt shame when I opened the letters. My hands were shaking. I took a deep sigh. I told myself it was only a hard time. Ethan used money from the bakery. He said he would return it. I believed him. I trusted him. I whispered to myself, he is my son. I thought trust was love. The bakery still smelled of bread, but it did not feel warm anymore. The door opened early, but closed later than before. I stood alone behind the counter. My hands were tired. My heart felt heavy. I never asked hard questions. I never said no. I felt afraid to lose him, so I lost myself instead. Ethan learned something without words. He learned that I would always fix things. He learned that he did not need to take responsibility. I did not see it then. I knew something was wrong, but I stayed silent. I thought I was protecting my son, but little did I know, I was teaching him how to walk away. Ethan stopped going to school that year. At first, he said it was only a break. I believed him. He woke up late every day. I heard his alarm ring, then stop. The room stayed quiet. I felt a small fear in my chest, but I pushed it away. I worked alone in the bakery. I opened the door before sunrise. The air was cold. My hands were shaking as I mixed the dough. I thought about Ethan sleeping while I worked. I whispered to myself, "He needs time." I knew I was lying to myself, but I stayed silent. Money began to disappear. Not all at once, little by little. I opened the cash box and stared at it. I counted again, then again. My fingers felt numb. I took a deep sigh. That evening, Ethan came home late. I looked at him and tried to smile. I said softly, "Did you eat today?" He nodded and went to his room. I felt invisible in my own home. The next week, the landlord came. He stood at the bakery door with crossed arms. His voice was calm, but cold. "Rent is late," he said. I nodded and apologized. My face felt hot. I felt shame crawl up my neck. Then the bank called. Then a customer complained about cold bread. I heard whispers behind my back. People looked at me with tired eyes. I felt smaller every day. At night, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The light above me flickered. I held a cup of cold tea. I thought about my life. I thought about my choices. I whispered to myself, "I did this for love." I knew something was breaking, but I did not stop it. One evening, Ethan asked for money again. I felt my heart beat faster. I opened my mouth, then closed it. I gave him the money. My hand was shaking. I hated myself in that moment. I thought saying no would make him leave. I thought silence was safer. I thought sacrifice was love. But each time I stayed quiet, the space between us grew wider. A few days later, Ethan came to the bakery. He stood near the door and looked around. The smell of bread filled the room. I felt hope for a second. He said, "Mom, we need to talk." His voice was calm, too calm. I looked at him and said softly, "This bakery is our life." He sighed and looked away. "This place is old," he said. "It keeps us poor. I need money to start my life." I felt a sharp pain in my chest. My hands were wet with sweat. I thought about the mornings. I thought about the promises I never spoke. I whispered to myself, "Stay calm. You don't need to sell it," I said quietly. "We can fix things. We always do." He shook his head. "No, you fix things. I am tired of waiting." Those words stayed with me. They followed me all night. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. I felt the silence press down on me. I thought, when did he stop waiting with me? The next weeks were harder. Bills came faster. The oven broke once. Customers left earlier. I felt tired in my bones. I worked longer hours, but earned less. Ethan stopped helping completely. He came and went as he liked. I watched him from the corner of my eye. I felt like a guest in my own bakery. One afternoon, he spoke again. "I found someone who wants to buy the place," he said. My heart dropped. I felt dizzy. I looked at him and said softly, "This bakery is our life." He did not answer. He only said, "It is time to move on." That night, I stood alone in the bakery. The lights were off. The smell of bread was gone. I touched the counter with slow hands. My fingers remembered every crack. I felt tears burn my eyes, but I did not cry. I knew I had a choice. I could speak. I could say no, but fear held my voice. I whispered to myself, "If I lose him, I lose everything." So I stayed quiet, and in that silence, the conflict grew. Then, one Monday morning, everything changed. I arrived at the bakery before sunrise. The street was quiet. The air felt cold on my face. I took the old key from my pocket. My hand was shaking. I tried to open the door, but it did not move. I tried again. Nothing. I felt my heart beat faster. I looked closer at the lock. It was different. My key did not fit anymore. I took a deep sigh. I whispered to myself, "This is not right." I knocked on the door. No answer. I looked through the glass. The lights were off. The place felt empty, even from outside. After a long moment, the landlord came. He opened the door with another key. I stepped inside slowly. The smell of bread was gone. The air felt cold and heavy. I walked to the counter. My legs felt weak. I opened the cash box. It was empty. I stood there and stared. I counted again. Nothing. My fingers were shaking. I felt a tight pain in my chest. I could not breathe for a second. I ran to the small office. I opened the safe. It was open. All the money was gone. Every bill, every coin. I sat down on the floor. My back touched the cold wall. Tears ran down my face. I did not wipe them away. I felt frozen. I thought about Ethan. I thought about the key, the old key I gave him years ago. I remembered the day I placed it in his hand. I smiled and said, "This is yours too." I felt sick now. Little did I know, that moment was the beginning of the end. I checked my phone. No messages. I called him once. Then again. The phone rang, but no one answered. I whispered to myself, "He will call back." I waited. Minutes passed, then hours. The silence grew louder. I felt shame wash over me. I thought, everyone warned me. I knew the truth, but I refused to see it. I stood up slowly. My knees were weak. I looked around the bakery. The counter was clean. The shelves were empty. It felt like a goodbye. That was when I realized something important. Ethan did not only take the money, he took my trust. He took my voice. He took the years I spent protecting him. But what hurt me most was not the money. I stood alone in the bakery. The lights were off. The oven was cold. There were no customers. There was no smell of bread. Only silence. I felt my knees grow weak. I sat on a small chair near the counter. My hands were shaking. I pressed them together, but they did not stop. I took a deep sigh, then another. The room felt too big without sound. If only I had said no earlier. If only I had spoken when my voice was still strong. If only I had stopped fixing his mistakes. I thought love meant sacrifice. I thought silence meant peace. I knew now how wrong I was. I looked at the empty shelves. I remembered Ethan running between them as a child. I remembered his laugh. I remembered the way he held warm bread. My chest hurt. I felt tears fill my eyes. I whispered to myself, "This is my fault." I whispered it again and again. I walked slowly to the counter. My fingers touched the wood. It felt cold. I leaned forward and cried. Not loud, not fast, just slow tears falling onto the counter. I thought about every time I paid his bills. Every time I said, "It's okay." Every time I protected him from the world. I thought I was helping him grow, but I was teaching him to escape. I felt anger rise inside me. Not at him, at myself. My hands clenched into fists. My shoulders shook. I cried harder now. My breath came out broken. I did not stop it. I stood up and walked to the back room. The small office was empty. The safe was open. I stared at it for a long time. I felt tired. So tired. That was when I spoke out loud for the first time. My voice was low, but clear. "I raised you with love," I said, "but I forgot to raise you with truth." The words stayed in the air. They felt heavy. They felt real. I knew then that love without limits can hurt. I knew that saving someone again and again can destroy them. I thought I was being kind, but I was afraid. I was afraid he would leave. And now, he was gone. I slid down the wall and sat on the floor, my back pressed against the cold bricks. Tears ran down my face. My chest moved up and down fast. I covered my mouth with my hand. I did not want anyone to hear me. Even though no one was there, I felt shame. I felt regret. I felt a deep pain in my body. But inside that pain, something changed. I whispered to myself, I cannot live like this anymore. I thought about my life without the bakery. I thought about my life without Ethan. I knew I could not keep waiting. For years, I waited. I waited for him to grow up. I waited for him to change. I waited for love to fix everything. That day, in the empty bakery, I stopped waiting. I stood up slowly. My legs were weak, but I stood. I wiped my face with my sleeve. My eyes were red. My head hurt, but my mind felt clear. I knew something had ended, and something else had to begin. The bakery was silent, but inside me, a voice finally spoke. I did not chase after Ethan. I stood in the bakery and let the silence stay. My phone was in my hand. I felt it vibrate once, then nothing. That's when I realized love also means letting go. I thought about calling him. I thought about begging. I thought about fixing everything again. My fingers moved, then stopped. I whispered to myself, no more. For the first time, I chose myself. The choice felt strange. It felt heavy, but it also felt honest. The days that followed were slow. I met the landlord. I spoke to the bank. My voice was quiet, but steady. I felt fear, but I did not run from it. I sold the bakery. The day I handed over the keys, my hands were shaking. I looked at the door one last time. I took a deep sigh. The smell of bread was gone, but the memory stayed. I paid my debts. Every bill, every late fee. It hurt to see the numbers, but I felt lighter with each payment. I knew I was closing a chapter. I found work in another bakery across town. I was not the owner anymore. I was just a baker. I arrived early. I followed orders. I cleaned floors. My body felt tired, but my mind felt calm. No one asked me for money. No one took advantage of my silence. I felt respect for the first time in years. At night, I rented a small room near the bakery. One bed, one table, one window. The street was quiet. I slept without fear. I thought about Ethan often. I wondered where he was. I wondered if he was safe. I whispered to myself, I still love him, but I did not reach out. One evening, a woman from the old neighborhood came by. She worked at the corner store. She looked at me with sad eyes. She said she had seen Ethan. He was staying with friends. He was asking for money. People said no. My heart tightened. I felt pain again, but I stayed quiet. She said, he is learning the hard way. I nodded. I knew this lesson was not mine to stop. I thought about all the times I had saved him before. I knew that saving him again would only break us both. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. I learned a new routine. I woke up early. I worked. I rested. I began to smile again. Not wide, not loud, but real. I felt something new inside me. Peace. I set boundaries. I kept my money safe. I kept my voice strong. I respected myself. Sometimes, at night, I missed him deeply. My chest hurt. My hands felt cold. I whispered to myself, This pain is part of healing. I was not a bad mother. I was a learning mother. In letting go, I found my strength. I want to tell you something I learned from my story. It did not come fast. It came with pain. It came with silence. For a long time, I thought love meant giving everything. I thought love meant fixing every problem. I thought love meant staying quiet and strong. I felt proud of my sacrifice. I thought I was doing the right thing. But I was wrong. Love is not about giving everything. It is about teaching someone how to stand on their own. Sometimes, letting go is the kindest thing we can do. I know these words sound simple, but living them is very hard. I felt fear when I stopped helping. I felt shame when I chose myself. I whispered to myself many nights, "Am I selfish?" I thought about my son again and again. I knew I still loved him. That never changed. But I also knew love without limits can hurt both people. It can take away responsibility. It can take away growth. I learned that boundaries are not walls. They are doors. They show us where love can be healthy. They show us where respect begins. When I let go, I did not stop loving my son. I stopped losing myself. I felt stronger. I felt calmer. I felt honest. For the first time in years. Maybe you are listening to this and thinking about someone. A child. A partner. A family member. Someone you give everything to. I want to ask you one gentle question. Have you ever loved someone too much? This story is very close to real life today. Many parents, partners, and even friends believe that love means giving everything. They work more, pay more, and stay silent more. They think sacrifice will protect the people they love. But in modern life, this way of loving can create new problems. Today, many young people grow up without learning responsibility, not because they are bad, but because someone always saves them. Bills are paid, mistakes are fixed, consequences are removed. Slowly, they stop learning how to stand on their own. This story reminds us that love needs balance. Helping is good, but over-helping can harm. Caring is important, but losing yourself is not love. In families, clear boundaries are as important as kindness. Saying no does not mean you stop loving someone. Sometimes, it means you respect them enough to let them grow. In today's world, where stress and pressure are everywhere, we must also take care of ourselves. A healthy life needs self-respect, clear limits, and honest communication. The biggest lesson is simple but powerful. Real love supports growth, not dependence. And sometimes, letting go is the bravest and kindest choice we can make. If this story touched you, like, share, and tell me your story in the comments.